this week's episode of Erased, Satoru Fujinuma is about to change history, but unfortunately for him, history has other plans. My god, this episode was just an assault on my feels. This is one of those episodes that just made me feel so good that throughout the course of the entire episode, I kept telling myself, when is something bad gonna happen? How is this going to go wrong? And by the end of the episode, we've already been delivered with an ominous message. This is the type of episode that will restore your faith in mankind, showing that good can actually outshine the dark. This episode is all about Satoru, who's finally reached X Day, where Hinazuki is about to be killed, and he's going to do everything in his power to prevent that from happening, even if it means completely embarrassing himself in front of his friends and his entire class. He spends the bulk of this episode trying to keep Hinazuki occupied, whether it be hanging out with her at this science museum, or even outright confronting her mother, which I have to admit was an incredibly tense scene, but what I really love about it is not only was Satoru actually sort of influencing Hinazuki's mother a little bit, but it also seemed like Satoru's mother was doing the same, and throughout the course of this episode, you'll get to see that it almost looks like she's finally starting to warm up to her daughter, or at least trying not to beat her mercilessly anymore, and frankly, that just makes you feel good. That and the fact that you got this beautiful moment where they threw a surprise party for both Satoru and Hinazuki because their birthdays are on the same exact day. All of their friends went to Satoru's house, they set it up, they walked in, streamers, party, cake, it just makes you feel good. That and the fact that this series is just downright charming and adorable. The lengths that Satoru will actually go to actually help out Hinazuki and be a friend to her is absolutely amazing. And it's so crazy that she's none the wiser and doesn't even realize that her life is literally being saved here. However, some of the rules are starting to bend a little bit and start to break. The phenomenon known as revival is starting to change its rules because in the first episode, they made it clear that when something bad is about to happen, when Satoru goes back in time, if he can prevent those things from happening, everything will start flowing again. Even though he's made such drastic changes in the past by becoming Hinazuki's friend, throwing a birthday party for her, and spending time with her until the point where she actually won't be killed, things are still not going back to normal. He's not being thrust back in time. He's not an older person anymore. He is still stuck in 1988. And at the very end of the episode, it all ends with Kaio not even showing up at school. It'll cause your heart to sink and make you almost have a panic attack. And yet, even with that incredibly dark ending, this episode is going to make you feel amazing. The thing I think I love most about it is that Hinazuki is finally starting to come out of her shell. She's starting to smile a little bit more, hang out with more people, and she seems to be warming up to Satoru quite a bit. I mean, she is allowing him to hold her hand like all the frickin' time, which of course is incredibly awkward and embarrassing for them in front of the other students. Probably my favorite thing from this episode, though, was throughout the course of the episode, you get to see that Hinazuki is actually knitting a scarf for Satoru, and she's trying to pass it off as she's actually just doing something she doesn't want to do, or she has to go home and be beaten by her mother. She even feels terrible about it when at their birthday party, she can't present Satoru with a gift, but that doesn't matter, they still manage to have a wonderful time together. And that's, of course, where the ironic title of this week's episode comes into play. This week's episode was called Accomplishment, and while at the end of the day, Satoru is actually getting to the end of this whole murder mystery, things are not changing. There's something else here that's going on, and we're gonna have to wait to see how that plays out. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Erased? Oh, it hits you right here every single time. And like I've said before in my previous reviews, this is just not the type of anime series that I typically watch, but it still has me completely absorbed, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with this twist, with her not actually showing up. If it's going to be some sort of red herring, if they're just trying to make us feel uncomfortable until the next episode, maybe she is just going to be late. Maybe she actually was killed that very night. The question is, who is the killer? There are plenty of candidates, and they're trying to give you a lot of hints to that. The most obvious thing is that her parents are the ones who actually killed her. Her mother, anyway. Maybe that other guy who's either her father or the lover of her mother. It's kind of hard to say. He had a small appearance in this episode. It's really weird. Personally, I think it's actually the teacher. I think he knows way too much about his students, gets way too involved into their personal lives, and seems to know everything that's going on with them. Of course, he's a teacher, so he is going to be privy to some privileged information, yet still I find him kind of creepy. Just the fact that he's almost always shrouded in shadow. Another thing that was really interesting about this episode is that Satoru is actually reliving events without him actually realizing it. When him and Hinazuki are hanging out at this big, like, science expo, he realizes that he actually saw her there at the same time years ago. Apparently she's something of a manga enthusiast as well. That being said, this was an incredibly heartfelt, heartwarming, and all-around heart-bursting episode of Erased that will just end making you feel so tense and scared for what's going to happen in next week's episode. On the technical side of things, another beautiful episode, great character designs, and some amazingly intense atmosphere. This is a series where just the outside setting is its very own character. You get completely sucked into every single scene. And so the murder mystery continues. We'll have to see what they're going to do in next week's episode of Erased. What I will say is this week's episode was pretty fantastic. Another awesome episode of the series, which continues to have some amazing, great writing, lots of heartfelt moments, and a great murder mystery to boot. So I'm going to give this week's episode, yet again, another 5 out of 5. You should definitely be checking out Erased. Whether you've read the manga version or you're just without watching the anime, you gotta check it out. It's going to be one of the biggest mystery hits of 2016. And remember, if you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below. Did you get as choked up as I did watching this episode? Did you have a favorite scene? What happened to Kaio at the end? Was she actually killed by a mysterious assailant? Or is this just a trick for the viewers? Make sure to tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!